We're back. This is Renovate and Build with Jim and Sandra, powered by Fair Trade Works.
Good morning. We're continuing our discussions this hour on fresh starts in construction on Renovate and Build. And of course, because we're all preparing for the new year, it's time to talk resolutions. Any New Year's resolutions for you, Mr. Perkins?
Well, we were just talking about before we came on air about last year's resolutions at the office, and at Fair Trade Works we're all kind of health, and we try to be healthy and stay fit. And my last year's resolution was I would have a six-pack by summertime. So clearly that hasn't happened. So I'm going to be a little bit more conservative in my resolutions this year and just stick to being a good boy, working hard.
I'm being very careful not to say anything.
Yeah.
This is like asking a woman her weight. You're not going to win if I say anything right now.
So we'll just move along.
It's hard, isn't it, for New Year's resolutions?
It is,
Truly
yeah.
it is. I know a lot of people always put all this change on themselves and all this extra pressure, but
We'll keep it simple, keep it easy, and just
exactly.
with Fair Trade Works, we'll behave ourselves and go build some cool things.
Something that isn't difficult is to have a fresh start by buying a new home. Or maybe you want to get rid of your old home and go into something smaller or larger. To talk about real estate and the market and what's anticipated in 2015, we're joined right now by our in-house expert from Walter Homes, Realtor Nicola Campbell. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Busy holiday season, I'm sure.
Indeed. Yes, it has been. We're looking forward to a big 2015 as well.
Yeah, it's exciting year 2014 for you guys.
It's exciting. So good morning, Nicola. So I know you're always a good girl. So Santa, so I'm assuming Santa was very good to you.
Yes, of course. Santa was good. I was good also.
Sales.
yeah. Business-wise only, yes. We got spoiled over the holidays, like everyone, I hope.
Got some well-deserved rest, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. So, Nicola, 2014 has been obviously was a crazy busy year, and still is. But can you kind of wrap it up for us, and exactly how busy Vancouver was last year and the surrounding areas, just to kind of quantify it. So
yeah, I would say that 2014 as a whole was possibly the busiest year that we've had since 2007, which was just the big ramp up before the 2008 situation. So if you look at any of the sales charts and that with pricing and tempo, and that 2014 was a record setter across the board, which is really exciting. And we've seen different trends in different segments of the market, from detached to attached. Interesting patterns of high and low points. So a couple of the pockets, condos, for example, we saw low points or quieter periods happening in the spring and into the summer, the beginning of the summer, which is unusual. Usually spring will be a little bit busier for that segment, but then it was setting records in September, October. So it's been a really interesting year. But as in terms of pricing across the board, everything is finished off on an all-time high.
As we suspected from all the newspaper articles and TV and radio articles.
Yeah, and interest rates, there's so many contributing factors to that. So it definitely went in the same pattern that we were expecting, and we can see that also spilling into 2015.
And construction was off this year as well. We had strange cycles.
Yeah, I know
so
you're thinking there.
Year.
It was, as you noted, it's always a kind of a regular cycle. But yeah, we noticed at Fair Trade Works our construction cycles are weird off, and where it lulled when it was really busy, and then in odd times when right in the aftermath of all the kids going back to school and the teacher strikes, we were extremely busy right when we thought it would quieten down, and right up till Christmas. We always kind of trend up to Christmas fairly busily, but people were calling us for extensive renovations like middle of January, which is kind of unheard of. So it's weird. It was just a bit off timing. But as you said, it's just kind of record setting and extremely busy out there. So.
And we could be creating new cycles. I mean,
absolutely.
When you're in unprecedented territory like Vancouver, are you thinking the same thing for 2015? Or?
Yeah, and I think perhaps one of the reasons that you might have been getting calls in January, from what I see, is that West Side will trend, it will go up in correlation with the Chinese New Year. So West Side is usually the first market that kicks off, and then all the other markets fall in close proximity to that, give or take a month to 2 months, depending on how far out of the quote-unquote epicenter that we're talking about. So last year, I think the Lunar New Year was beginning of February, first weekend in February. And that's where we started to see the buying begin. And so that's been the same pattern for a couple of years, well, more than a couple of years now. I'd say the better part of 4. And so for the more seasoned realtors out there that are coaching their clients, we would definitely be encouraging our clients to make sure that they're on their home renovations if they're thinking of selling by January, February. So they're part of that that segment in the market where it's super busy and it's a full out seller's market.
Yeah, it's even with the changes in it with the immigration from the Chinese markets to North America, I think that kind of slowed things down a bit and kind of put things off too, where there was obviously a public knowledge that the visas had been kind of shut down, and that kind of definitely retracted the market a bit.
Yeah, they took out the economic model, which basically allows somebody to establish residency by giving the government, I believe it's
It was about $800,000, yeah.
and then they have to spend 1.5, 1.6, but it doesn't specify where. It doesn't say if it's in a business or it's real estate or what have you. So most just lean to real estate because it's the safe bet.
Yeah, and it's not hard here to spend 1.8 on real estate.
No.
The numbers just fit, right? Like, you know, what are you going to spend it on? Obviously, residents in the markets were good. So, but and I know shortly, I talked to my immigration lawyer a lot, and I know in the next couple of months and into next year, I know they are going to be introducing some new immigration policy for the Chinese. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes through that legislation, and that's going to definitely change the market, right?
That'll be very interesting to see. I think I was speaking with a client in the UK, and he was saying that they're having a similar situation as Vancouver, being that out-of-country investors that are, you know, it's a resort destination effectively, Vancouver, and it's safe banking wise, and it's beautiful, and people want to live here. So but they're seeing that in the UK as well, that there's a lot of people parking money there, and it's driving up the prices.
Yeah, it's funny. In Ireland, I was talking to one of my advisors before I came to the show, and you know, the Irish markets have been in the dumps, the real estate markets depressed now for 2 or 3 years, but it's in a frenzy again, literally a frenzy where stuff is doubling and tripling in value within months, right? Yeah, really, like stuff is just, we were talking about a single family home that went 800,000 euros over asking. Like the market has literally just gone ignited again back in Europe. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we should buy in Ireland. Okay.
Move to Ireland, start drinking Guinness, and buy a warm jacket and buy an umbrella. Yeah.
I can do that.
Looking at 2015, are you and your fellow realtors all expecting this frenzy to continue?
Yes, particularly around detached. Detached seems to be the end of the market that's seeing the biggest gains. We've seen underneath $1 million, because up to $1 million you can have 5% down, 10% down, 15%, depending on what your income can qualify you for. But over $1 million threshold, you need to have 20% down, and then I believe that it goes up in increments. So anything over $1 million to 1.5, you need to have 25% of that or 30% of that, and it keeps going up. So everything under $1 million has just been flying. People very clearly don't have the 200,000 or 20% to be going over that. So in North Van, for example, I have lots of clients looking there under $1 million, and in all of North Van, there's only 54 listings that were available under $1 million last month, which is a far cry from what it was even in January. So it's interesting the changes that are happening there.
Yeah, and they approved the laneway homes last year in North Vancouver, and those things obviously qualify, right? So we've had a ton of calls about building new laneway homes up in North Vancouver.
Yes, maybe we could talk about that a little bit, because we are seeing a lot of people that are wanting to consider doing that on home properties. It's great for income, it's great for in-laws, and so on, and it's just an excellent use of space. There has actually even been dialogue, though I'm not sure how far it has got at this point, that at some point one could be able to sell their laneway home
as a separate entity.
As a separate entity. I think that's a long ways off in the distance, but that would be interesting to see if that came through as well. So what do you think, what's the timeline typically for building a laneway?
how long would it take to build a laneway home? Oh, it's pretty quick, basic structures and not big excavation things. So, we've built laneway homes in, 4 months. We can get them up quick. We've prefabbed some stuff, all sorts of different techniques for different clients, right? So, but
Excellent.
yeah, we can build quick, and it's obviously there's not as many choices, and we can really power through it, right? So it's something that we love to do, and we've built some interesting stuff. And I just think North and West Vancouver is really geographically, suiting for laneway homes because of all the dense vegetation, difference in elevation. So we'd be able to build lots of different kind of cool structures rather than just all the flat lots in Vancouver where you just kind of plonk them in the laneway.
Right.
North Vancouver just seems to have a nicer feel about it, and some of the stuff that we've done is really cool. So yeah, it's
Excellent.
nice.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
So, so sorry, I kind of divvied off of your question, but we definitely would see detached continuing on the rise. Condos and townhouses, I have to say I'm perplexed by. They haven't really seen much market gain over the past couple years, and I think that this can only last for so long. So if I were a betting person, I would think that because at some point when people are priced out of the homes, where there's only, like I said, 50 listings in North Van, for example, under $1 million, then the next thing that one would gravitate to would be townhomes or duplexes and so forth. And that segment of the market really hasn't seen as much growth as I would anticipate. And I think the demand hasn't been there as of yet. But I could see it going there.
Yeah, as interest rates change a wee bit, I believe, and people will just do anything to get themselves into a single family home. Once they're into that kind of, once they can touch it, right? So, like I said, I believe, but the wealth and the demand is single family homes selling within minutes of going on the listing, right? Like, the market's that hot and there's that much wealth globally around to purchase these homes. Why are people going to say, I'm going to go buy a townhouse when there's plenty of money around to buy these single family homes? Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, it wasn't what it was 5 years ago, but that's just growth in the market. So such strong demand that people they're just not going to get into the townhouse market yet. And I think local people haven't still got their head around from their history of time in Vancouver that live on larger lots, live on the west side. They would rather stay in an older home or just, figure it out rather than actually downsize or change their mindset into living in these kind of townhouse communities.
Which is really the way that the most major urban cities are. I mean, in New York City, you're not going to be living in a house downtown, but Manhattan is where everybody wants to be. Yeah. So I could definitely see a change in mentality moving forward.
It will be leveraged, but with that money around, it's not quite leveraged enough. Give it another year of increase in prices, and people are going to have to say, okay, we give up. And as soon as that trend starts, it's just going to stick, right? So.
Right. Yeah.
Just want to welcome everybody who's listening to us, you guys. If you're just joining us, this is Renovate and Build on CIL 650 with Jim and Sandra, and we're joined right now by Nicola Campbell of Walter Homes, and we're talking real estate and what we're looking forward to in 2015.
So, Nicola, what do you see as the best real estate investment next year?
So, like I was saying, I think that condos and townhomes haven't quite reached their potential, so to speak, and certainly I really feel that there's a gap between what you can get space-wise in a townhouse versus what you can get space-wise in a detached. And, some of these bungalows are total 1,400 square feet, 1,200 square feet. And if you can achieve that in a townhouse that is in a nice complex, in a nice area, good school catchment, all those things, and maybe it needs a couple renovations, that you can improve on it. I really think that that's where people are going. And like I said, the values have been relatively level for the past 2-ish years. So I think that it's due for an increase. Yeah,
I think people who are developing townhouses are going to unlock their thinking a bit too and actually make them a little larger in square footage and just kind of change the old. Everything you see is just these thin little narrow boxes, right? So I think developers now are going to be, and we're seeking sites too, to just make a little bit more square footage, a little bit more thought process into the design, where people will be willing to pay quite a bit more for something that is because they just walk in, it's small, it's narrow, and all these things. A little bit larger square footage, a bit more luxury, and I think people of a higher net worth are going to start really seeing the potential in these, right? So
absolutely, and it comes down to the floor plan every time. You could walk into a townhouse that is 1,500 square feet and split on 4 levels and, has a kitchen that's very narrow, galley style, and next to no separation between living and dining, and they're not livable spaces. and people want the livability. That has to be there in order to have a successful, new project in the case that you're speaking. But yeah, I definitely, if I were betting, I would say that the attached market, condos, townhouses, duplexes are due for an increase this year.
Yeah, and one comment quickly before we move on is I always think when I've spoken to people of that demographic about townhouses is that they say, I have no problem living in a townhouse detached situation, but not 20 or 30 of them, right? When it's blocks in 6 or 8 or 10, so it's really not so overwhelming so they don't feel as if they got 10 neighbors, they've got 3 or 4, right? Which I think
I mean, certainly feeling more community and more like each of the townhouses has a bit of an identity or something different, and it's unique. We all want that kind of be able to identify with our home and feel that connection with our personality. So I could see, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And for efficiency, they're wonderful for heating and any kind of sustainability. Any of those, when you're sharing walls with people, it's so much easier. Let's talk about the rest of Canada. What are you thinking for trends in across Canada? Are we also seeing hot real estate markets?
Across the board. Again, like detached, if we look at major cities, Toronto, Calgary, all this year have seen huge increases. Detached is going anywhere between 15% gains to 30% gains, depending on neighborhoods and areas. What's interesting, like for those two pockets, both of like Toronto and Calgary specifically, townhouses and condos have been on the rise, which Vancouver, like I said, hasn't as much. So that's the one major difference between those markets, which I find odd. So, and in addition to the fact that the differential between the price of detached properties and attached properties in Vancouver just continues to widen, and in Calgary and Toronto, it seems to be more of a linear relationship where the detached may be going up, but the condos and townhouses are as well, just maybe to a lesser percent, but there's still measurable increase. So it's interesting again that the condos and townhouses haven't seen that as an average type of gain.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it catches up and what happens then. You might just see boom out of the box.
Nicola's prediction. Write it down. Yeah.
Okay, so my next question: if money was no object, what would you recommend to me for the next year in real estate for investing?
I mean, we've been talking about it so much, so I think that there's huge value in trying to get into areas where there are density changes. And you've already cited a couple in North Van. There's some that are happening in Vancouver as well. So anything where there's those kinds of changes going on and those pockets going on, I would be paying attention to those. Because as the area fills out, obviously, like the land is worth more and so on, as a detached investment, for example. And also for flips, there's a lot of fear and confusion tied up around doing flips, maybe not on like a one-bedroom condo, but on larger pieces of property, higher-end product, where those buyers are not interested in doing their own renovations, as a general comment. So if you were doing flipping, I would say that that's a good consideration. And combined with the low mortgage rates, which then lowers your carrying costs, and all of those things start to come into the equation when you're doing your cost analysis, I would be looking at that as well.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to mark down those Nicola, predictions. We thank you for all your time this year, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you very much to you as well.
We've been speaking with Realtor Nicola Campbell of Walter Homes. If you'd like to reach Nicola, you can visit her website at walterhomes.ca, or you can call her at 604-767-4600. That's 604-767-4600.
And the information continues here on Renovate and Build. Getting older doesn't mean you have to leave your home, especially with all the new accessible features you can be added to your homes, like elevators, lifts, ramps, and home services. And we'll find out today, advanced planning is one of the keys to remaining where you are happy throughout your golden years. We'll be speaking with the founder of Daughter for a Day, Elizabeth Shuchuk, later this hour about how we can create accessibility spaces now before we need them.
And imagine calling your aunt to get her famous carrot cake recipe from your fridge, or watching your favorite celebrity chef from your fridge. Gary and Meg will be telling us all about the latest in smart refrigerators next on Product Face Off. Stay with us.
There's still lots more ahead. This is Renovate and Build, powered by Fair Trade Works with Jim and Sandra.